For this project, I'll be revisiting an old friend, the fox minnow. A lure I made with an accompanying series of videos a couple of years back. For this film, I'll be giving the lure a bit of an update by adding a weight shift for longer casts. Design wise, I've lowered the profile of the lure to make it a little more streamlined. Internally, the fixed weights and the bent wire form have gone, to be replaced by a simpler, stronger through wire that also sits low enough to allow for a weight shift chamber. And finally, the lip has been moved a little further back. I'm using 3.2mm balsa wood sheet for the body, which I'll laminate up to give me the thickness. For wire, I'm using 1mm stainless steel TIG welding rods. And for weights, 5.5mm stainless steel ball bearings. First of all, I need to cut the balsa down into strips. For a measure, I'm using a pair of calipers set at 20mm, which is a couple of millimeters over the finished height of the lure. To square up the cut edges, I've stuck some 100 grit sandpaper to a homemade sanding block, which I've checked for squareness. To use the block, I can simply run it along the edge of the balsa strip while it's pressed against a flat surface. For the cross cuts, I'm using a fine-toothed razor saw and a homemade miter box. Lengthwise, I've also added a millimeter to give myself some sanding room. And I'm going to cut 4 pieces from the strips. As a temporary fixing, I'm snipping off a couple of tabs of double-sided tape and positioning them at the ends of one of the pieces. Once the backing has been peeled away, I can push the 2 pieces together as accurately as I can. And back with the block, I can sand all the faces until the edges are flush. With a couple more tabs added, I can stick the first template with the weight shift pattern into position. To create some holes, I'm using a piece of 6.5 or quarter brass tube, mounted in an electric drill. To sharpen the tube up a little, I'm running a needle file on the inside to create an edge. To use, I can simply position it over the marks on the template and guide it with my fingers. The speed and the weight of the drill make light work of the balsa, but leave a clean cut behind. Once I've cut 4 holes, I'm going to use a square metal edge to guide a craft knife along the lines. If it's all looking good, I can tidy up with some more sandpaper glued to a lolly ice stick. Out of curiosity and for a bit of a test, I can add another balsa strip and then pick up the bearings and give them a jiggle. To create the harness, I'm going to start by cutting the wire to length at 250mm or 10 inches. Using a pair of jewellery pliers, I can position them in the centre of the wire and begin to bend. I can form a shoulder first and then wrap to form an eye. Taking the wire past itself, I can then bend it back to form the other shoulder. Swapping to a pair of snipe nose pliers, I can bend both ends to 90 degrees, giving me a small drop down, to this, the belly eye. Back with the jewellery pliers, I can open up the wire so the branches are parallel, and then I just need to straighten up the wires. For the rear eye, I can lay the wire over a template and place the end of the pliers into the correct position for bending. Then I can repeat the previous process to form the new eye. And finally, trim the tag to length. For the front, I'm giving myself an extra millimetre by moving the wire back on the template before bending, as the front eye only has one shoulder. If I've worked accurately, the finished wire should lie flat and match the drawing. To bind the wire, I'm using some fly tying gear. This is 2-pound monofilament, strong enough to force the wire and hold it in position. To close the wraps, I'm using a whip finishing tool made from a piece of the same wire. With all the wraps finished, I can add some drops of super glue and leave it to set. To create a space for the wire in the body, I've opened up the balsa strips again and removed the tape. I can then set my calipers to 3mm and use them to position a straight edge on one of the pieces of balsa underneath the ball channels. Using a section of hacksaw blade, I can lay it up against the edge and saw lightly. I'm looking for a depth just over half the thickness of the wire. This will create one side of the main channel for the wire. I can then mark on the drop down to the belly eye and other features. To remove this, I'm using the knife to make 2 stock cuts. Then coming in at a low angle, I can peel away some of the balsa from both sides. For the tag ends of the wire, again I can score and then remove the top layer of balsa. And repeat for the other end. With one side complete, I can copy the marks over to the other side and repeat the carving. Once completed, the wire should sit neatly embedded between both pieces. Using a liberal amount of super glue, I can then cover one of the spare pieces of balsa I cut earlier. One of the shaped pieces can then be glued into position with the space for the wire showing upwards. Another dose of glue can be used to harden up the balsa especially around the channels where the balls run. Once it's had a little time to soak in, I can wipe off any excess. And then it's the same treatment for the other side. And that's where this part of the build and the video finishes. In the next video, I'll deal with shaping the exterior of the layer and also finishing and testing. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to share and like or leave a comment below. For more handmade fisherman videos, follow the link to my channel or subscribe to be notified of future videos. Thanks for watching.